Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Deen Talk. And if you're not floored, I still am. This has just been a very educational show for me. I hope it's been educational for my viewers. And you know, while I was talking in the last segment, I got a little excited. All of a sudden, I made the woman in Hawaii Muslim, and I was saying that men were in the organization, and then I got corrected, like, no, there was no men. It was all women who organized this. But I'm going to bring men back into the picture because I was told that there wasn't a single arrest in the march. And because of that, I knew that means that a lot of men weren't involved. Because men, we can fight if you look at us the wrong way. You know, if you bump into us the wrong way, there's going to be... So I want to know what, for you guys, what is the role in this movement with women empowerment and what the women did in this march? What was the role in it, and should there be a role as we move forward? What is the role of men in all of this?
I first have to say that men were involved as volunteers. Definitely, there were men and women.
For me, they're either in or out.
But the women were the leaders of the march.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the women were the leaders. There were some men volunteers. So what do men have a real something to add to it, or is it better to
sit back and listen?
Sit back and listen. Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me more about that.
I'm just joking, but
no, there might be something there.
I think that there is, you know, we as Muslims would not have Islam if it weren't for Sister Khadija. Mm-hmm. And it's important to recognize and understand the role of women and to, you know, let women lead. You know, I was raised by a strong Muslim woman, mm-hmm. and I understand about equality, I understand about equity, and I understand that men and women are equal. And I just think it's important for us to keep that in mind as we are going forth. No one needs to be pushed down or pushed in a corner, but we need to be equal partners in this fight for justice, fight for our families, fight for our communities, and fight for equality. You know, that means parity.
I do think, though, that, I mean, for all the men that are watching, there is a role that they can play that can help the cause. I mean, for me personally, my father was huge in just putting me on the right path. In his family, actually, they didn't send any of his siblings who were female to college. Mm-hmm. And he grew up in Pakistan, but he came here, he went to MIT, and for him, it was like, all my kids are going to be educated. It doesn't matter. That's completely irrelevant whether you're male or female. And just putting me on that path where it wasn't even a question, and making that my priority rather than focusing on, you know, something else. And of course, my mom. I mean, I always feel like my dad gave me those tools, but then my mom always gives me like the advice and you know, just, you can do anything. She's like, you can be the president of the United States of America. That type of encouragement and just building that confidence did come from my mother. But I do think even my husband, with our 3 girls, I mean, they're snowboarding right now. I'm very nervous, but he's like, you know, the girls, boys, we're going. And so just building that confidence, it is important for fathers and, you know, brothers to kind of encourage that. I mean, I think women are strong, and even without that, they do succeed, fortunately, but, you know, it doesn't hurt, it helps.
I think it's huge more than, and I'm going to let my other guests talk, but I think it's huge more than we can say, because I've seen a lot of commercials on the television trying to fight back stereotypes. Like there was one talking about, you know, they say you throw like a girl or hit like a girl, something like that. And so they brought like girls who were, it was like more about this woman power, and don't use these statements to try to make it seem like, you know, I don't throw that well, things like that. And changing the framework of how we talk about women and empowerment for females and things like that.
And like, I can tell you as a woman, like I have a husband who is very supportive and a father who is very supportive, and still it took a lot out of me to accept the leader in me, because society, it's almost like to be a woman you have to be A, B, C, D. It's usually around looks and weight and stuff like that. And so it, you know, and I'm in my 30s now, and it took. And I think to me, that's with a supportive father and with a supportive husband. It made me realize, what about the other women who don't have that around, may not have that. You know, and it's just so, but I do feel like, especially the Women's March, and that's part of the reason why I went. I went to see other women do well, to use their voice, to give me the power to use mine, right? It's almost like other women give you permission to use your own voice. And I think we're in a, I think men are more ready now. It just seems like, you know, more men are calling themselves feminists and being pro-women. So it seems the right time,
Yeah,
right?
I think I agree, and I think this at this point, what we saw in the march, we're waiting for men to just acknowledge our concerns and you know acknowledge that these concerns that were brought up within the march, whether it's the impact of marginalization on women or women's health issues, these are real issues, equal pay, equal opportunities, how maybe disability impacts women differently than men, how access to environmental issues or environmental issues in general can have more of an impact on women than men. And acknowledging that, I think, is a first step for men at this point in terms of
I don't
their
think you guys were
involvement.
waiting. I wouldn't say we were waiting for men to acknowledge. I think y'all took the Women's March is proof that it was a major step in. Y'all been taking too long. We'll take it from here, you know, type of thing. And to me, so you know what you said as far as even with you having a supportive father and a supportive husband, it still took a lot to acknowledge the leader in you. And this Women's March being and like you guys said, it was people marching across America. There's people marching in other countries. For women to see that, maybe women who also have a problem acknowledging the leadership abilities in themselves, what type of transformation or do you think might be happening just by this march alone?
I think it's powerful. You know, there are places even in this country that are similar to some places across the world where women in particular feel disempowered. But we had marches organized in the Deep South, in Mississippi, in Alabama, in places that are not as, say, progressive as Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C. or California, which is where they had 33 marches.
You saw the smile
know,
come to her face when she
I
said
love
California. Okay.
California's the homeland. So, you know, I just think that people are deciding, women in particular deciding, you know, we can't wait for people to give us things. We have to stand up for our rights, we have to speak up for our rights, and we have to advocate for our rights. In addition to the people, the women and the men who were at the march, there were also women leaders who were speaking at the march. And I think hearing those voices was important. I know a lot of people didn't get a chance to hear those voices, but if they go to womensmarch.com, they can all see the video and check out some of the strong voices of Tamika Mallory and Carmen Perez and our sister in Islam, Linda Sarsour, who are speaking about the injustices in the different communities. And they're working on behalf of the community to right these wrongs that are happening.
Now, I you know, if you guys can add to this, because I think personally, curriculum has a lot to do with it, right? So we talked earlier in the show about some things that, you know, maybe I don't know about Black history in America. Maybe I know some things that other people don't know. But there's a lot of history out there that once people are familiar with it, it shapes your mind of who you are. So you're talking about marches that were done, you know, in the South. You also mentioned Khadijah, the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, who, you know, depending on what angle you're studying the history of our Prophet at, you may or may not highlight the contributions of this powerful woman. And so I think Islamic schools and public schools in America need to start teaching more this woman role in society, for them to not have to have a supportive husband and supportive father and all this, just to realize that they are powerful and can put on the largest march in history.
And there's so much shame in those words for women too. There's so much shame in being called sometimes strong and outspoken and you know, like, because then you're like, oh, is she being like a man? And it took, you know, as a counselor, and I work with women all the time, they don't, there's so many women out there who don't even want those attributes because it
must
you know,
be a cultural thing, because I've never heard of that before. I mean,
I
in the
mean,
Black
it's
community,
real.
It's real,
we
'cause
are, we don't shy away from being strong. I was raised by strong women who are all married to men, strong men, and being strong is not, it's not a detriment. You know, and it's important for us to let folks know that.
You know, it's interesting. So you mentioned curriculum and education. So having 3 girls, I'm always kind of trying to figure out what's the next thing. Right now they're in a really good school, but it, you know, goes to 8th grade. Where am I going to send them to high school? And one of the things I came across is that for girls, it's actually helpful for them to be in an environment with other women because they're, you know, actually our education system is very much tailored towards women. And if you look at, you know, the statistics of women graduating and how well they do, girls are doing, they're outperforming boys because the education system is actually tailored towards the way a girl or female generally learns. But for boys, being in a mixed environment actually helps them because the girls in the class actually help the boys in terms of just the dynamics within the classroom. So it's really interesting, but I do think that whether you send your children to, you know, a mixed school or a girls' school, I think it's important to just watch out for what those boys need and what those girls need. So, for example, at the school that my kids go to, for middle school girls, they have like a girls' night in. So that even though the most everything is, you know, co-ed, they do have that time to kind of be with other girls, talk about things maybe they won't feel comfortable talking in a mixed environment. So I think it's important actually for both boys and girls as we're raising children to kind of look at what their specific needs are. I'm forgetting the name of the psychologist who has this series of books right now. I can't remember, but you know, there's a lot of literature out there right now. But I think it's important for us to watch out for their specific needs.
We're gonna talk more. We're gonna pick it up from here in case you were thinking about going somewhere or changing the channel. When we come back, because we had some real issues, and I want to talk about that perception and things like that. All that and more on Deen Talk. This is one of the most exciting shows I've been a part of. Hope you guys are staying tuned and listening, taking notes, because there's probably a lot of terms you got to look up on Google or whatever your search engine is. When we take a break, you look the stuff up. Come right back to Deen Talk.